Hey, thanks for joining, and this time I will be showing you guys how to create configurator in Shopify without actually writing a single line of code. And you may know that 3D-Bits app was mainly tuned for people who can code, especially if you wanted to create variants and link those to 3D models. That was not very easy. You had to write some script, use our visual programming environment, or just code it in TypeScript. And now it became much more simple because we introduced a viewer editor. You see here that I have a chair, which I modeled myself, right? It's not really fancy or something, but it illustrates the point, and we will be creating this product today. So you see that I can switch between the dark and bright materials, and also I can make it into a large chair. You see that it's just bigger, right? Or a small chair. And both dark modes and bright modes have these large and small variants. And you see that the price also changes because it's just a standard Shopify variant, right, that we're using. And 3D-Bits app now picks up those variants and is able to decide which Gltf model to show to you. So I mentioned that you don't really need to write code for this, and this is because we introduced a new thing into a 3D-Bits app that's called Viewer Editor. And if you go into this new page here, you will see that we have this application here which allows you to create a configuration for your product without really needing to write code. So behind the scenes, we will be setting up the JSON structure, but actually you don't need to care about that. So what I will do is first, I will just hit this button, examples, and I will open this chair configurator example. And you will see that we have exactly the same product as we had here in the demo page, right? And here you see that we have configured 5 models, right? So we have the legs and the base of the model, and these are just the legs and this circle. And then we have the large dark variant, the large bright variant, small dark, and small bright. And all of those have the variant matches here that you can set up. And then when they match your product variants, your product variants will be driving the behavior. So this editor is quite nice and convenient because you can play around with variants immediately in here. So you can say dark, you see that it just adapts to whatever you set up in these models. And you can change things like background color. You can set it to blue, click update, and it will just update everything, right? Yeah, you can configure more things like arc rotate camera, directional lights. You can add a skybox even, so we can do that really quick. And so let's try and do city. You see that by default it uses these blur options. And if I hit update, it will just load this skybox. And so this makes it much easier to develop your configurations. And also if you're someone who is technical, you can always swap the UI and enter this JSON coding editor, right? And you can then just play directly with the properties in JSON without actually using the UI. So some people may prefer this, others will hate this, depends on who you are. But basically you can switch back and forth and even to the point where you can say, maybe you don't want to use the skybox, so you can find the skybox configuration here and just delete it like that. And then if you hit update, you will see that you are back to using the background color here that is being set through this property. And also you can just go back and swap UI again to enter into the UI of your editor. And you will see that now the skybox definition is gone. And those two sort of models, they collaborate. And whenever you're finished, you can just copy or download your script as JSON as well. And next time you're busy with it, you can upload it. You also see that the viewer editor is in beta mode. So yeah, expect that there might be some bugs. This is the first release that we've made this, and you can also just check other examples here, like the vases. You see that in this case, we don't really have anything to configure, but we have one GLB file that we load, and we also say that we want to rotate it around y-axis and this speed, and this allows you to sort of create those interactive environments that can load several models, not necessarily one. And yeah, you can configure various aspects of the scene in this viewer editor, right? Okay, so let's get started and let's look into how this chair configuration was made by using this viewer editor. And what I will do is I will just start with this empty scene, right? We will not be using anything, so you will understand better, how everything works, how you can progress when using this configuration editor. You will also need to use several files. So you can either use your own files, or you can begin just trying and setting up this same chair configurator. The URLs that you had in the example should work also on your product pages, right? It's a CDN of Shopify that uses that. And you see that I've designed these 5 models that are used in this chair configurator. So we have legs and base GLB file, and GLB is just a binary Gltf file, right? If you don't know how it works, I really recommend to learn that. We have a small bright variant, we have large dark variant, we have small dark variant, and large bright variant, right? So all of these cover our variants in Shopify product page, and we just need to figure out how to map all of those together into a single product. What I will do is I will create a new product. So I will start fresh. I will also configure the theme app extension for 3D-Bits app, and I will just say that we're creating this tutorial chair configurator, right? For description, yeah, let's just say that this is a nice chair that does not require any coding. So this is quite cool. I will say that it will be draft. You see that we have here default product theme template. I will first hit save. So I will just now go into this template. I will create a new one based on the default product template. So let's do that. Let's get here. I will go here, products. And you see that I have a lot of templates here. Just ignore those. I will create a new one. So we have tutorial chair viewer. So this is a unique template for us. It will be based on the default product template. Let's create that. So this is a new template that we've created. It's based on default product template. And I will just create a new block here under the product information. And I will see that I'm using BITBYBIT-VIEWER theme app extension block. And it will add this small canvas here that will not show anything because it's empty. But you see already that we have everything here pre-configured. And I will be going through those and explaining a little bit how they work. And I will be also linking them to metafields of the products. And let's just start with this model URL. So we will just link it to 3D-Bits model URL. We will use the scene JSON configuration. That's exactly where we will place our configuration from viewer editor, right? So let's link that also to 3D-Bits scene configuration here. Let's go and say that we will use camera position as well. And actually, because we will be using the JSON, all of these settings will be overwritten by whatever comes in the scene configuration. If that is skipped in the configuration, then those settings can be used as well. But yeah, I will just illustrate that later on in the tutorial. So for the background, let's use the background linking. And other things can stay the same for now. I will just make sure that I enable the debug mode. This is some new setting that I created. It makes it easier to understand what happens with your variants and their names, technical names, and how to link those with your configuration. So let's enable the debug mode. It will be quite empty now. You see that we just have quantity, which is 1, and there's this bits context, something from 3dbits application that will count iterations of our changes to the product. So we will also try to prepend our 3D canvas to the picture. There's no picture yet, so we will have to create that. And we will also remove the children before prepend. If it's not very clear what I'm doing here, you know, there are other tutorials that explain that in more depth. But now it's just important for us to link everything because it's a new template, right? And there's also this new setting that I call receive input names as variants. And this is also something new, which is related to how the variant names are being used and linked to your scripts. This just makes sure that it's a bit safer to use those names that are technical than the ones that come from the labels in HTML. You see here that there are some explanations of why this is needed, but yeah, I will not go into much detail about that. We will just make sure that the configurator works. And let's hit save now because we finished our configuration. Let's also go back to this product page. I will also upload this new image here because I want to have a 3D view in its place. Let's do that. And here it is. So now that we have this image, we can refresh this page and go here and see that we want to use tutorial chair viewer template. I'll hit save. And now if we preview this project, you will see that we have our debug mode enabled and there's this empty canvas because we didn't really configure anything yet, right, to pass into the viewer theme app extension. So now we just have this debug mode, and I will start by configuring this product, and I will say that we have these variants. So let's add options like size and color, and I will do it like this. So let's say that we have color, and I will say that we have a bright option and we have a dark option. And the names are really important because we will be using those also to map with our configuration. Let's add another option. Let's call it size. And I will say that I have an L size, or yeah, let's start with S and then L. Now that I have that, I will just hit done, done, and save. So now that I have those variants, I can go into this preview mode and you will see that we have this JSON object which has color 1 bright and size 2 S. And when I change those variants, you see that these options change. So this is a debug mode which helps you understand what is happening with your inputs. And when you will be ready with your product, you know, you can just disable this debug mode in your template, and yeah, you can then publish the project. So make sure that you don't enable the debug mode on the template that uses your products in production, right? The ones that are being now sold. So always make sure that you have maybe a separate template for that, which has the debug mode enabled. And then when you're ready, just switch to the production template. But yeah, this is just making sure that you know how those property names are called technically. So bright, you see that color 1 is the technical name of this variant, and size is size 2. And sometimes Shopify adds those numbers, sometimes it doesn't, but it's important to just have those here in debug mode so you know what you need to map actually for your product. Those options are now crossed out because we don't have any availability set here. Let's do that. Let's say that we have like 3 products available of all of these variants. Let's hit save. And now if I will just preview the product, you will see that now they are just regular options. We don't yet have any pricing. Let's also do that. Let's add the pricing. So let's say that the small variant may cost 120 euros. The large one is 200. And then the dark variants are maybe a bit more expensive. Maybe the material is more expensive, right? So we have these prices, and let's hit save. So these are all standard, standard things, standard options of Shopify, and you don't need to code anything here. Let's hit refresh. You will see that we have a new pricing information, and they just update whenever we click on these options. Okay, so far so good. So we have this empty project, right? We haven't linked anything yet, but I will just close these old tabs. We don't need them anymore. And I will now go into this viewer editor. So you see that this configuration is now empty, and I will first go into the file list that I have here. You know probably how to upload those files, so you can do that yourself. What I did, I just saved those files from Blender. You see that I have everything set up in here, but then I was just exporting GLB files through this export GLTF 2.0 command here. And yeah, I prepared all of them. I uploaded them to Shopify's CDN, and then I'm able to use those. I will also just move my head into this side. So I will go now, I will copy paste this link. I will get back into the editor. I will add the model. And you see that it says there's no URL provided yet. And let's provide the URL. So I just copy paste the URL in here. And let's see, do we need to set up something here? I don't think so. We can just hit this update button now. And you will see that I've loaded my model now. And it's quite large. It only includes these legs and the circle on the ground. Currently, these legs are quite large, and there are a few things that you can do. You either configure the camera, you move it further away, right, so that the object fits your scene, or you can also just say here that you maybe want to scale down the model. So I will just scale it down to 0.1, and it will become a bit smaller. And it will fit the standard scene that I have set up for this application. And now you see that they are nicely positioned. I'm going to configure the camera later, but I will just now say that I want to also use the background color, which is maybe something darker like this. And I will hit update. So now we have really basic setup of a static GLTF file that we've loaded. There's nothing yet to configure in this case, but what we can do, we can look how this JSON looks like here. You see that we have one model in the array, we have background color, and what we can do is just copy this to clipboard and go into the product page here and paste that configuration into this 3dbits scene config. You see that all of the other metafields are empty, and that's how it should be in this case, because we will be using this scene configuration, which will overload everything that is in here, and that's totally fine. So let's do this. Let's copy paste, and now we can go into this preview mode, and if it's white, maybe we need to refresh that. Yeah, so let's refresh. You see that we have our chairs in here, and I can enter the full screen mode, look into this model. There's no light yet, there's no shadows, but we will be adding that shortly. So now if I hit these configurations, you see that nothing changes in this environment. And let's go ahead and change that, right? Let's go into the file list. Let's find this small bright variant, and let's copy paste this. So what I will do now, I will add another model. I will paste this URL, and you see that it's small bright. That's indication when you name the files right, you know then what kind of variants you need to use. But first I will also make sure that that file is using 0.1 scale. And also I will say that we will be adding variants now. So variant will be, if you remember, we had this here in this debug mode. So we have color 1 and it's dark and bright. And let's go ahead and link this model to color 1. And this time it's bright. And for now, that's it. We can just close this, hit update, and you will see that now we have our chair and we just have a single variant that is bright. Let's add another model, and this time I will use this small dark model. Let's copy the link and let's open this up. Let's paste the link. Let's set the scaling again to 0.1. And let's add the variant matches here. And let's see that color 1 is dark. And that's it. We can now hit update. And you will see that now we have two modes in this color one, dark and bright. And if I hit the dark, the chair just turns dark. And if I have the bright one, the chair turns bright. So what happens here is that the viewer editor is smart enough to figure out, what kind of variants we have in the application. It sets up this UI for us to play around. And, if you're scared of losing this configuration, just make sure that you download that from time to time. So just click download. I didn't yet implement any sort of persistent storage for these configurations, so you will have to play with files for now. Later on, maybe this will be extended to include more like backend based features, but for now this is just simple JSON, so you can save it as a file, and because you usually just paste it to your product, you can also retrieve it from there as well. So this is just a small side way of explaining how it works. And also now let's add additional two models. So let's add the model 4 and let's link it to this bright large variant. So let's copy the link. Let's add the model. Let's paste the URL in here. Let's also go here and say that we want to use 0.1 scaling. And let's say that this time the size 2 is L, right? So that's also how it should be. And also let's say that the color 1 is bright. So now we have to begin thinking about these, variants that go from large and small and bright and dark. So we have to indicate everything on each variant matches list. So let's do that. Let's update. And now you see that there's a bit of a problem because we didn't really say to these models, are they large or small? And let's change that. So let's add another variant in this one. And let's say that this is size 2S. And also let's go back to this one and add the variant and say that this is size 2, also small. So now if we hit update, you will see that now for the large variant, we have a nice model. And also the dark mode doesn't exist yet, and the S mode for the dark does exist. So we do need another model, and that's actually the large dark model. Let's go here, let's find that, let's copy the link, let's paste the link here. Let's set the scaling to 0.1 again, and 0.1. I mean, if you don't want to do this, just scale your model before you upload that to Shopify. But in case you just don't mind playing with these numbers, that's also fine. Let's add the matching variants. So color 1 is dark, and size 2 is L. Okay. Let's hit update, and now we have our chair. We have L, dark L, small, dark, bright. All of the variants are now set up. So we can just hit copy. We can go into the product page here, paste it into this metafield, hit save, and because everything is linked, we can hit this preview. And it's still loading this old one. It takes a bit of time, but if we hit refresh, okay, let's try again. Okay, so after refreshing several times, it's there. And now we can hit dark and large and small variants and bright variants for large, and everything just adapts. And this is super easy, I think, how you achieve the result of configuration. And you see here that we have this color 1 and size 2. This model doesn't really adapt to quantity or bits context, so this doesn't really matter for you. Those properties just being picked up because those are also inputs in the product page. But for us, the only thing that matters is that these settings are being picked up, and you can then react on those in your configuration. So you saw in the chair configurator that the chair is rotating slowly, and this effect you can also achieve really easily with this viewer editor. What you can do is you can go here and say to the models that they should rotate. The only thing is that because you have all of those variants, you will need to do that for each of them. So let's add the animated rotations by doing this. Let's say that we will be rotating around the y-axis, and that is an up vector, right? So let's rotate around that, and let's turn the speed to 0.03, maybe, that it would be a bit more noticeable. And I will have to do that for all of the models. So let's go here. Let's add the rotated animations, y003. And you have to make sure that you really use the same speed on all of them, because otherwise they will just rotate in different speeds and the model will not look right. Let's add this one. So y003. Let's go here and let's add rotations. y003 again, and here y and 003. Okay, so let's update now this configuration, and now you see that the chair is rotating. What I also want to do is I want to move the target of the camera a bit higher so that it doesn't look into this zero ground level when it starts. So let's do that. Let's go and create a camera configuration. Let's leave those for now, but let's say that we want to look at maybe 3. Let's see how it works. Yeah, so this is a little bit better. Basically what happens is that now the center is somewhat higher of the target of the camera, and it just positions your view nicer. Let's copy this to clipboard. Let's go into the product page. Let's paste it in this metafield. Let's hit save. And now we can just go and preview this again. And okay, so now you see that it's rotating, and you can also switch between all of the variants on this product page. And this is quite nice. One thing that we're missing is the light, and to add lighting to your scene, you go again to the viewer editor. You can go here and say that you want to add a directional light. Let's do that. So now we have one light with its default configurations. If you hit update, you will see that you now have the shadow on the ground, and it's just being lit on this side. This is quite okay. Maybe you want that, but I will just configure maybe to use a different direction. So this is a vector of the direction of the light, right? So you have to remember that. And let's make those two numbers positive. And now let's update. Let's see how that looks like. So now you see that the shadow is being created in the middle of the chair, and when the chair rotates, the sun just remains in the same position, and this is quite nice, I think. Maybe you want to make the light a little bit more intense, so a little bit more bright. Let's hit update, and now you see that it's more bright. And you can also add another light if you want to, but for this tutorial, this is enough. And if you hit copy, you can go again to your product page, paste it here, save it. And now if you just refresh, and now you see that we have a shadow and the light. And you can also just disable the shadows if you don't like them. You can configure them here. You can configure also how precise are the shadows. You can also configure the shadow bias and normal bias. If you see some sort of bad effects of lighting on your model, maybe it's larger, and due to that you may need to update those values here. You may also need to update the camera properties here, like if you really have a larger model, maybe you have to make it, the upper radius limit larger, etc., etc. So you have to keep in mind how big are your models, and based on that you might need to adjust these settings a little. That's why they are exposed to you, so you can do whatever you want with these basic scene settings. Okay, so now that we have all that, I think it's pretty clear that it's good to save our file. this is it. We're finished with it, right? And let's say that you just want to, move into this empty scene again. You hit this button here, and you see that we start fresh again. And if you want to upload your file that you saved, you hit this upload button, and it will just load back everything as it was, and it will just pick up all of the settings that you had before. Also keep in mind that sometimes it's really just much more convenient to have this JSON configuration. Sometimes it's just easier to find things here because it's just more concise maybe than the UI, especially when you're configuring these animated rotations. And also because this JSON contains also a schema, you have a good IntelliSense in this small editor as well. So if you type something incorrectly, maybe you see that the shadow Minzy is Dada, you will see that it doesn't really like that. It says that it's an incorrect type and it's expecting a number, not a string. So this configuration is also fine, but it's maybe more tuned to people who understand how to code. And this is just a JSON that at the end you can just say Control A, Control C, right, and paste it as well. You can use that to paste it into this 3D scene configurator. So let's look into one more thing, and let's try and remove the background color. So now if I will update this script, you will see that the background is white. And what I can do is I can copy this script to clipboard. I can go into the product page. I can paste the configuration into the scene config. So when I update this project, of course, the background is just white. This is normal. But now because the background isn't being set in the configuration JSON, you can set it here. So because we linked it as a metafield, right, you can say that you will just use this red color, for example. Let's hit save and go and preview. So now you see that the background is really red, and this is not exactly what we want probably, but important thing to understand is that, the JSON will overwrite all the settings that you have in these metafields and use the setting from the JSON itself. Otherwise, you can just configure it here. It really depends on your preference. The thing is that JSON allows you to configure way more than these metafields, and that's why it was being implemented. You see that we have just a few metafields here, and some are linked to the viewer extension, some with the preview extension, and some really are required only to use the runner, our sort of coding runner. And yeah, for this case, let's just maybe also use the dark color, and that's it. Another important thing that we skipped was that we can also use the skybox here, and skybox is a bit different sort of animal than the background. It can use this clear sky, or let's pick the city. You see that it has this property called blur, so it will not be very understandable how it looks like, but if you hit update, now you get a nice environment here. And if you want something more like sunny, you can hit this clear sky, update, and now you have this blue sunny environment with the skybox. And also if you just copy this to your product, you go here, you hit save, this will overwrite your background color. Okay, so now that we have this, you see that the chair is also picking up the environment color. It's a bit bluish. The materials are looking okay. I'm not really an expert in modeling, so don't judge me on the quality of the model itself. This is really meant to show you how you can use the variants and configuration of the recently released viewer editor. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I will be making new ones shortly, but this one is super important to understand. This is one of the features that was being requested quite often by people, and not everyone is capable to code things in TypeScript, so this viewer extension allows you to do that easily. You just have to upload some static files as you do with images, right? And you just need to map them correctly to certain positions. And that's it. That's super easy. You don't need to touch code if you don't want to. And yeah, that makes it very useful, I think, for a lot of people. So now that you're done with your configuration, you just should disable the debug mode, and we can do that now. We can go into this viewer template. Well, let's wait for it to load. Let's hit this bit-by-bit viewer, and let's say that we don't really want to use the debug mode. Where was it? So let's disable this one, and this will disappear, and we can hit save. And now this product, if all is well, will just be showing you the chair and nothing more, right? So there's no debug anymore, everything's in the background, and it just works. Okay guys, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. This new editor is in beta mode, so if you find some bugs, just let me know. You have to realize that it just works with variants that are standard in Shopify. It doesn't have any sort of capability to create its own UI. It just picks up whatever is in your product configuration page, whatever buttons you have there. It will pick it up, but you will have to make sure that everything has a match of a static GLB file for that to work. I will be making more tutorials about this topic, but for now, this is it. I hope you enjoyed it, and let's see each other in the next ones. Cheers!